Welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast.
We have allowed ourselves to become so disconnected and ignorant about something that is as intimate as the food that we eat.
Be prepared to grow your own for victory.
God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tend the pink-combed pullets who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark. So God made a farmer.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. My name is Harold Thornbrough from smalltownhomestead.com, and I'm glad you're back with us. Today's topic is going to be what's going on with my tomato plants. It's a question I get a ton this time of year because a lot of people are having trouble with their tomato plants. I see that question popping up all over social media, and I think it's just a good time to maybe answer it on the podcast and talk about some of the common problems we see with tomato plants. And I want to talk about good organic solutions for some of those problems. But before we get into that, I'll give you a few updates around the homestead here. Garden's still looking good. We been getting a lot of cucumbers, starting to get some good red tomatoes now. All the leafy vegetables are still doing good, other than the lettuce. The heat's kind of got to the lettuce. Of course, the spinach has been gone for a little while, but kale's doing super good right now. And there's just garden's looking great. The summer squash, the zucchini, is looking really good. Getting lots of beans, so the garden's great. And I don't know if I want to talk about this or not, but I will. It's exciting. It's an exciting thing in my life. I look at my website, smalltownhomestead.com, and a tagline I've had on there since I started the website was "Homesteading today for a better tomorrow," because I care about the future of people's families, the future of our country. And then I see the news, and you see lots of bad things happening on the news. And, I've just never been more motivated to try to do my part to make the world a better place. And this last week, I've even been extra motivated because my oldest daughter announced to me that I'm going to be a grandpa here in just a few months. So, I look at that and I say, yeah, I'm really motivated to try to make the world a better place. And we start by making the world right around us a better place. And I really believe that homesteading has a lot to offer. It's the future of our food. It's the future of our health. I really truly believe it's a better way to live. And I like to spread that message. So, hey, what would a future be without tomatoes, right? We should talk about tomatoes because no garden is complete without tomatoes. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the common problems we see with tomatoes. And I guess I'll start with what I think is the most common one because it's the one I've dealt with the most in the past, and that's early blight. I have dealt quite extensively with early blight. Now, early blight is fixable. It's a fungal disease that hits both tomatoes and potatoes, and it kind of starts with a dark brown spot on the leaf. Now, how you'll kind of really identify this is it'll have these, the dark spot will be slightly sunken in, and it'll have rings in it, or whatever. It may not be a perfect circle, but whatever the shape of the spot is, it'll have these rings in it, almost like the rings of a tree, like you would see if you cut a tree down. But they'll be real dark. And that's how you kind of identify early blight. Now, it can spread to the stem and get the stem dark and even onto the tomatoes, especially if you have a spot on the tomatoes where maybe a bug has made a hole or something. You'll see it turn the tomato itself dark. But generally, you see it on the leaves, and you'll see these circles, sunken down circles with the rings in them. And that's how we identify it. And that's a really common thing. I've dealt with it nearly every year. I think last year was the first year in a long time I hadn't had it, and I've already been dealing with it this year. Some of the common reasons, especially if you have a wet season, it seems to bring it on really quick. But some of the things we can do to prevent that, I'll talk about prevention first, then we'll talk about solutions after you get it. prevention might be to grow a more resistant tomato. There are many hybrid tomatoes that are blight resistant, so those are a good option for a variety of tomato that will be blight resistant. Also, it's real important to have disease-free seeds if you're planting from seed. And you can do this. There is a hydrogen peroxide solution that you can use. It's a real mild solution that will help rid the seeds of the fungus and really increase your chances. But most people that I know actually purchase plants from a greenhouse or something and plant them, and you really can't control that. So another thing you can do is change the location. If you've battled blight in a location before, plant your tomatoes in another part of the garden the next year. And, that will help minimize the fungus. You want to try to keep the foliage as dry as possible. Water at the base of the plant. Don't let... many people, I see this mistake all the time. They'll get some rain shower head type attachment on their hose, and they think it's just naturally better to let it come down like rain over the top of the tomato plants, and that's not the case. With tomatoes, you want to water at the base of the plant, and also having some mulch of some sort around the plants helps because it keeps that soil from splashing, even during a rain, from splashing up on the leaves and spreading that fungus. So those are things you can do to kind of prevent it. Now, if you see it on your leaves, you want to get rid of those leaves. But you have to be careful on how you get rid of them. You see, it usually hits the lower leaves because, again, it's been splashing up from the soil. It's in the soil. The fungus is there. And, it can get on those bottom leaves. So you want to remove those leaves. I need to back up. Also, a cornmeal solution around your plants. If you take some whole cornmeal, ground cornmeal, and kind of spread it around your soil, it itself is not an antifungal, but it will feed the microbes in the soil that will destroy the fungus. So having cornmeal down around your tomato plants, lightly put around your tomato plants as well, will help prevent it. But even if you get it, it's a good time to put it on around your soil, around your tomato plants, and try to minimize it after that. But back to the removing the leaves. Now, when you remove the leaves, I like to take a pair of scissors. And what I will do is I will put just a few drops of bleach in a jar of water, a little bit of bleach in a jar of water, and I will snip the stem behind the leaf, snip the stem off at that bad leaf, dip the scissors in the bleach solution, and then go to the next leaf. And I won't snip and then snip, because what you're doing is you're spreading the fungus. You want to kill it before you snip the next area, or you can just spread it further around the plant. So I'm real careful about that. Also, you want to get the leaves away. You don't want them to brush up against the plant. You want to pull them away from the plant as you cut them. And I burn them. I mean, I really do. I got a campfire ring in my backyard, and I'll just toss them in there and burn them. I want to get rid of it. You don't throw them in your compost bin. Don't lay them around like mulch. You want to get rid of that fungus, that infected leaf. Get it away. So also, just keeping some of your lower leaves trimmed off your tomato can help as well. Those are some of the things. Now, I was talking about the cornmeal solution. That's actually something you can do once you get the blight on your tomatoes. I told you go ahead and put the cornmeal around the base of the plant. But you also, what I like to do is make a cornmeal juice. You just take about a cup of cornmeal and soak it in 5 gallons of water for a little while, like an hour or two. Let it kind of permeate, and and you'll get this milky colored water from the cornmeal. And what I'll do is I'll strain that out and put it in a sprayer, and then spray it on the foliage of the plants, and that'll help to kill the fungus on the plant. And I'll spray it on the ground, and I'll take that cornmeal out of the bucket and even spread it around after I get all that out of there after I separate it. And I'll keep that, and I'll go ahead and spray that around on the foliage of the tomato plant. Now, like I said, in and of itself, it's not a fungus killer, but what it does is it it feeds those microbes that will destroy the fungus. But also using a baking soda mixture is good too. You can take like 4 teaspoons of baking soda, 1 tablespoon of horticultural oil, and put it in a gallon of water. And you can spray that real lightly on the foliage, on the especially around the parts that were infected with the fungus. Be careful not to put too much on. Don't spray the ground around when you use that solution. Just lightly spray it on the plant. I like the cornmeal juice solution a little bit better, and the reason is because it's a more mild solution, and it is, you really can't overdo it. I'd give it a good soaking with that stuff when I put it on the plant. Go ahead and just spray it down real good, give it a good soaking, and then spread that cornmeal out. And that will help. I had to do that this year even, and it worked really good. So that's one thing you can do. Now, that treatment right there is also going to be used for the other things I want to talk about. Okay, now let's talk about what's called late, or some people call it fire blight. Now, this is the bad boy. This is the one you don't want to get. This is more identified by really dark leaves. The whole leaf dies. It doesn't really have the circles like the early blight. You can actually see the fungus growing in some cases. It has a fuzzy growth on the underside of the tomato leaf, and it'll actually affect the stems. It'll start turning the stems a dark brown or even black color. It'll spread all over the leaf. You won't necessarily see the circles. It gets kind of on the older leaves too. I mean, it just doesn't have any preference. It just starts eating the plant up. Fire blight or late blight is the bad boy. You get that, you're probably going to be ripping the plant out of the ground and getting rid of it, getting it away, and hoping it didn't spread to the others. You do your cornmeal mixtures, like I said, if you see it and you got one plant that's got it and the 2 on each side of it don't have it yet, I get the cornmeal mixture out and I'd soak them down, I'd prepare, and then hope, because once it starts spreading, it spreads. Now, and it's pretty common in an area. You can actually go to a website called usablight.org, usablight.org, and it'll actually show a map of where the blight's kind of spreading across the country, and give you some insight as to where it's going on. So you want to keep an eye out for that. I'd go check that out if you think it's in your area. Again, it's kind of prevented the same way as the early blight is. It can come from the ground, so you want to be careful about the water situation. Use the cornmeal. It'll help kill the fungus, but it's a bad boy. You get it and it'll spread really fast and it will kill your plants. And you can try to save them. I would. It costs you a little time, but your chances are slim, to be honest with you. You're better off just to get rid of the plant, get it out of there, burn it, and just destroy it, get rid of it, get it away from your other plants. And then you probably don't want to plant in that area for a couple years, to be honest with you. I mean, it's that bad of a thing to get. And I'm not giving the Latin names for these funguses and these diseases. You can look that up. The funguses. I'm not good with Latin, so you can figure that out. But these are some bad funguses. This one is particularly bad. It'll mess things up for you. So since there isn't a whole lot we can do about that one, we won't talk much more about that. The next thing is called Septoria leaf spots. Now, Septoria leaf spots is often confused for blight, and on this you have these leaves and they'll get like a gray-brown area, but it'll mostly, the leaf as a whole will be more yellow. And it's a fungal disease, but they don't have the rings like early blight. They have more like a black spores. It'll be filled with more like little black spores. And it'll generally get on the lower leaves first. Again, it comes from the ground. And really with this, you would treat it pretty much exactly like early blight. And that's why I say it doesn't really matter if you can't tell the difference. Although they really don't look alike because it doesn't have the sunk down spots with the circles. It's the same thing, same treatment, same way you go about getting rid of it. Remove the leaves, get the cornmeal juice down. Be careful with your watering. It's the same thing. It's a fungus. It operates the same way, even though it's a different fungus. So it'll be treated the same way. And like I said, most of these will be treated the same way. Now, something that often happens with your tomato plants is people will see their leaves wilting. Now, it'll wilt in a couple different ways. Sometimes it'll get really light colored and start wilting, and then other times it'll just look really dry and wilty. And there's two different things. One, the more light green color with a wilting is usually caused from overwatering. And a lot of people think, well, my plant's dying with some fungal disease. And a lot of times it's not that at all. It's just that they've overwatered or they just had a lot of rain recently, and they just need to try to either wait it out if it's been a lot of rain and hope the plant bounces back. And that's where good drainage is important, especially if you're in a raised bed or pots or something like that you're growing in. But I've seen people just overwater and just nearly drown their tomato plants. So, that's something you got to watch out for. Now, if it gets more of a dry, dark green, wilty look to it, it's probably not getting enough water. And that can happen too. So, you just get a lot of high heat and, especially in the evening sun, really, really cooking them, it will curl the leaves up and that'll start happening. But again, some people confuse it for blight, because blight will do a little bit of the same thing, only it'll have the spots as well. So, you just got to examine it kind of closely and pay attention to it. Now, I would use something like a Biowash just to help make my plants a little stronger. Biowash is something you can kind of spray. It's really it's a fertilizer booster. I'm hesitant to call it a compost tea, but I guess it probably is. It's good stuff, It's really good stuff, and it helps to keep the plant strong and help it to get through, those tougher things. Every year we face challenges, right? Every year we're either going to have a lot of rain, or we're going to have too much heat, or too much cold, or whatever. Well, a strong plant just has a better chance of making it through anything, even blight. So whatever your plant faces, if you got a good, strong, healthy fertilizer on it, it will help your plant make it through that. So, yeah, use something like keep compost tea or a Biowash around, and keep your tomato plant sprayed down with that, or the ground around it. Keep it fertile. Have good soil. Use good fertilizer, and that'll help keep your plant strong. Now, something I had to face, I guess it was a couple years ago, is all my tomatoes started getting these cracks in them in the late summer. And I thought, what in the world is going on with that? And I did a little research on it, and it's just from the fluctuating temperatures. It's the growing conditions. It's usually it's the kind of back and forth, like, say, maybe you get a few days of rain, and then you get a few days of drought, and then you just got these fluctuation of temperatures. And it can cause these splits. They'll kind of heal over, but it just makes an ugly, a really ugly tomato. And it's nothing wrong with them. It's not bugs. Now, once they're split open, it does present a place that bugs can, kind of flock to, but it doesn't necessarily do that. And it's these things, these scars and such, they're not going to hurt anything. And again, I think a strong plant will weather these things better. You can help by maybe putting up shade cloth on the hot days to kind of regulate the temperatures a little bit. Some people do something like will grow something tall on the west side of their tomatoes to kind of shade them in the evening. And that's a good idea, especially if you can maybe put up some kind of a bamboo patch or something like that will grow tall. Or maybe you got a trellis and you're going to trellis up some late season beans or something like that, cucumbers, that will kind of shade out the tomatoes in the evening and help them deal with the really hot days. Try to maintain your water levels. Try to make sure you're watering them if it's got a real dry time period. And if you're getting too much water, hopefully you can have good drainage in your area. And, maybe a little bit of it comes down to when you actually plant the tomatoes. To give them a stronger root base and get them a little deeper in the soil where they can maybe utilize the water better. When you first plant your tomatoes, you should plant your tomatoes kind of deep. If you buy plants, you should go above where they've got them planted at, a few inches. Tomato plants will actually root out from the stem, so you can plant them a few inches deeper, even right down to the leaves, or you can even remove some leaves and go down a little deeper with it. You can go down a few inches past where maybe they have them planted at, which will help you. Some people actually trench them and like kind of lightly bend the stem and then kind of trench them in, and then roots will form all along that, and then kind of curve them up and then pack the dirt around them, and that'll give it an area for the roots to get more water and feed the plant better with water and regulate the water better. So those are just some little tips even that might help later on in the summer right off the bat when you're planting. So there's just a few tips there to try to maybe maintain the looks of your tomato. So we pretty much treat all these things the same. A good strong plant, starting off right with good soil, a good planting, watching how you plant them, feeding the plants with a good compost tea and compost in the soil, and then use the cornmeal solutions, the cornmeal, actual whole cornmeal in the whole ground cornmeal on the soil, and then a cornmeal juice to spray the foliage with. Keep an eye on your yellow leaves, your bad spots, get those out of there, destroy them, and then just enjoy your tomatoes. I think if you can do all that, you're going to have a good tomato crop. And it's still no guarantee. I think tomatoes, no garden is complete without them. But I think nearly every gardener would agree that tomatoes are finicky. They are kind of hard to grow in some ways. They grow easy, but they're hard to maintain. They do seem to be a plant that is more susceptible to problems. So you do need to do things right. That being said, if you're having a lot of problems, there are some good hardy hybrid varieties out there that are very blight resistant, disease resistant, strong plants, and maybe they're not as good tasting as some of the heirlooms, but no doubt about it, they are a hardier plant. So you might have to go with some of those varieties, and I always plant a couple of those around just in case. I didn't mention this either, but that's something I do as well. I don't plant all my tomatoes together. I just kind of scatter them around. I'll have a few plants here, a few plants there, a couple plants over here, and I kind of space them around in my garden. And I do that because of the spread of the fungus. If that patch over there gets infected, maybe these others won't. And that's just a little trick I learned a while back too, because I watched it go from plant to plant to plant, and there wasn't a whole lot I could do about it. I actually got hit with a late blight a few years ago, and really it just destroyed all of my tomato plants. I got just a handful of tomatoes off of it, and then they got the late blight, and there was just no saving them. They died so fast. With just in a few days, they were completely gone. The tomatoes were rotten. It really hit me hard, and I didn't have them. I didn't have my plants spread around like I do now, and so that's something I kind of learned the hard way. I've learned all of this the hard way when it comes to tomatoes, because I've made the mistakes, and you probably have too. But I do see this question quite often on social media, and I even get asked this question quite often. So hopefully that'll help you. I hope this has been helpful for you, and that you'll have a great tomato growing season. So I hope you all jump out in the garden and check out your tomato plants and see if they need any help. And until next time, happy homesteading. Thanks for listening. To see the show notes for this podcast or listen to other podcast episodes, go to smalltownhomestead.com. There you can also read our blog, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, and take advantage of the many resources we make available to help you along in your homesteading journey. Please share this podcast and help us to carry out our mission of helping others to homestead today for a better tomorrow.